All right. How are we today? Let's get right down to it. We are in the economics flipped curriculum. All right, so we talked yesterday or whenever it was we watched that video on aggregate expenditure. That was the Keynesian idea. And what happens is the Keynesian economics works out pretty well, his whole model with the aggregate expenditure and everything. But we end up in the 70s of a period of stagflation. And during that period, no one can figure out how to fix the problem because we're either increasing the aggregate expenditure model or we're decreasing it, and we're either causing inflation or unemployment to go up. One of them's going up, right? Because there's that inverse relationship. The problem nobody saw was that it was a supply problem. Because if you go back to that model, you'll notice there is no supply curve. There's just a consumption curve, right? It's a consumption function, and there's no part there for the producer and the cost of producing. So when that happens, we have to readjust the model and we come up with the ADAS model. Okay, and now we have aggregate demand, which is real GDP desired at each price level. Okay, there's an inverse relationship. It's a shocker when we're talking about demand. Okay, why is it an inverse relationship? Okay, so if I was asking you why does demand slope downwards, you would have said income effect, substitution effect, marginal utility. Okay, those don't work for aggregate demand because aggregate means all of the goods and services, right? So aggregate really means the GDP. When we talk about aggregate demand, we mean GDP. So what will cause, if the price level begins to fall, why are we buying more? Well, we're buying more because of what's called the real balance effect, which is really, I like to call it the wealth effect. We feel wealthier because prices are lower. So our homes and our stock portfolios and all those things make us feel richer. We're not really rich, we're paper rich, right? But we buy more because the price level is falling and we feel richer. Then we have the interest rate effect, which I like to call the interest rate effect. And that says as prices fall, the demand for money goes down, so interest rates go down, makes it cheaper for firms to borrow money and expand investment. Therefore, real GDP goes up because it's now cheaper to borrow money. And the last effect is the foreign purchase effect, also known as the net export effect. What that means is, as our prices are falling, it's cheaper for foreigners to borrow money. Not borrow money. It's cheaper for them to buy goods in our country because the price has fallen. And it's more expensive for us to buy goods in their country. So exports go up, imports go down, moving along the curve. Okay, so let's just throw these up here. I'll give you a second, quickly hit a screenshot. Okay. So let's go through what makes up GDP and also what makes up aggregate demand. So if I want to change aggregate demand, I'm going to have to change one of these four things. Okay? So we have consumption by households, investment by firms, government purchases, net exports. Okay, so in order to increase GDP, real GDP, we need to change one of these four things or more than one. Okay, so let's look at the first one, consumer spending, right? As we make more money, we spend more money, right? If you lower my taxes, I'll spend more money. I'll buy a new car, like this fancy car here in the picture. What's significant about this car? First car I ever owned. Okay? How old was I? 18? 17? Can't remember, but I was pretty young back then, a young whippersnapper. All right? So what's going to change consumer spending? Our incomes, household borrowing. If we borrow more money, we'll end up spending more. If we expect the economy to be good. Take the pandemic. We do not expect the economy to be better for a few months. I think I'm going to hold on to my paycheck and wait, right? Because I don't know if I'm going to have a job in the future. So if expectations, maybe I'll just wait, right? But if I expect the economy to be booming, I'm spending now, right? If I think wages are going up and all those other things, then consumption will go up. And the last one is personal taxes. You lower my taxes, I have more. Remember, here it comes, disposable income. Right? More disposable income means I can spend more. Even if I save a little, I'm still spending more. So personal taxes will affect consumer spending. Now, these are things we're going to look at in more depth because we need to see how much of a tax cut should I give someone and how much do they spend of that tax cut. All right, so that's your consumer spending portion. Then we go to investment spending, which is shown by the graph below, which shows us factories, right? And that's machinery that firms are buying. Okay, so what would get me to buy more of those machines? Well, if it was cheaper to borrow money, so if real interest rates had gone down, I'd buy more. If real interest rates went up, I'd buy less. Okay, what if I expected the returns? What do we mean? Well, if I expect business conditions to be good in the future, and I expect my return on my investment to be better, then I'm liable to buy those machines because I expect more profit from buying those machines. Okay, technology, right? So if technology is helping to make things better, then I will increase investment if I'm a firm. And the degree of excess capacity. If this factory is packed and we can't get any more out of it, then the idea of increasing investment spending would increase, right? But if we're in a bit of a recession, financial slump here, and factories aren't using all of their capacity, then it's kind of like being inside the PPC curve. Really, we just got to get to the PPC curve before we show more of this. Okay, and then, like firms, we have business taxes. Okay, so if you lower the taxes, which was the Trump tax cut in 2017, was to make it cheaper for businesses to come into the country. How did that work? And you know what? It depends on who you ask. All right, now we've talked about those two. Let's go to the easy one, government purchases. What increases government purchases? Government purchases. The government purchases more, aggregate demand increases, as long as interest rates and tax rates do not change. So we're going to hold everything else constant. The government's going to buy that submarine below. Therefore, government purchases will go up. Again, not transfer payments. Purchases, right? We build better, what are we looking at in Jersey, New York is a new tunnel for the PATH train. So transportation projects, you know, I'm big on we should be building more high-speed rail to get around the country, right? And government purchases decrease, the opposite effect happens, right? We have an aggregate demand decrease. What's an example? Less military spending. Okay, next one. So now we've gotten 3 out of 4. Let's look at net export spending. What's going to get the net exports to increase? People are making more money abroad. They're going to spend that money here, right? So they're going to spend some of it, not maybe all of it. Well, what happens if our dollar is stronger here? Then it's costing them more money to get our currency, and that makes our goods more expensive. So a strong dollar would make it less beneficial. So what would make it more beneficial would be a depreciation of the dollar. If the dollar is weak, that will increase our exports and decrease our imports. However, you have the opposite also. You have the dollar appreciation. Dollar gets stronger, exports go down, imports go up because the dollar is worth more. So those are the things that are going to cause our aggregate demand to change. Now let's look at it on a graph. So instead of, we had aggregate expenditures and real GDP on the last graph for the aggregate expenditure model. Here we're going to have price level. So the price level here is an index number. What do I mean by that? I mean the CPI, right? When we do basket over current over basket, that gives us a number times 100. That's what's going to be on the y-axis. You are to label that price level, or you're to label that PL. P does not cut it, okay? The x-axis is real GDP. That's what you're going to label it, not Q, real GDP. Okay, and then let's draw an aggregate demand curve, and you see it at an index of 108. We're buying real GDP of 506. As it goes down to 104, the consumption goes up to 508. So what makes us move along this curve from 104, from what is that, 508 to 510? What caused that? One of the 3 effects: wealth, interest, and foreign effect. That causes us to move up and down the curve. That is important, but it's not nearly as important as an increase in aggregate demand. So go back to those 4 things: consumption, investment, government purchases, net exports. If we change one of those that they increase, the AD curve will shift to the right. Okay, and that means we will have more output, more real GDP at the same price levels. Okay, and then let's look at it this way. What happens if we raise taxes on businesses and firms? They have less disposable income. Then we're going to buy less, and the aggregate demand curve will shift to the left. Okay, and we will buy less of each item, at each price index. So real GDP at each price index will be less. Okay, so that's your aggregate demand. I will put up an aggregate supply, and then we'll put them together, and we'll have a little party as they get together. Okay? All right. Take care, young people.